Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and some of you have asked me to compare the old and the new iPad Pro models. Really, I think the idea behind that is, should you upgrade? So that's how I'm going to approach it. We'll cover the smaller iPad too, the 10.5-inch versus the 9.7-inch. And I think you can see from the very beginning, the difference here is not the physical shape and size and all that sort of thing. It's going to be the screen. Same picture on both of these. One is more vibrant and also more bright. Of course, there's a lot more to it. We're going to look at them now. Okie dokie, we got two iPad categories to talk about and two broad use cases that we're going to use to compare them. First, we're going to talk about the 12.9-inch original iPad Pro on this side right here, and this is the new one. And you can probably tell just from looking at it, because this one has the more saturated, vivid yellows. It's also even brighter. So you get a nicer display. How important is that? Because the original 12.9-inch iPad still had one of the nicest displays around, right? Certainly among mobile OS tablets, it was hard to beat this. It's still a gorgeous display, even if it's been shown up, right? Well, if you're just watching movies and all that sort of thing, yes, you'll enjoy the new pretty display more. Yeah. No kidding, but is that enough to go through the whole hassle of selling your old one and buying a new one or that sort of thing? Probably not so much. And that's the way Apple does things, you know. And people say, oh my God, the problem is the iPad was so good that making it better is too hard. You know, Apple has never been a company who wants you to upgrade every single year. Witness the iPhone. We have the 6, the 6S, and then the 7. And we have the S year where they keep up with the competition, so the competition doesn't start to take over and beat them. But they're not really intending to force you to upgrade, because a lot of people feel pretty grumpy if they have to. So there you go. You're not going to feel grumpy if you stick with your original one. If you're doing productivity, the Apple A9X CPU is already fast enough inside the original model that I don't think anybody's ever said, oh my God, I bogged it down. You know, even doing advanced artwork with many layers and that sort of thing, I've never really made it get sluggish and slow down. It still has the same 4 gigs of RAM. That said, for future proofing and for you folks who aren't really thinking about upgrading, but which one are you going to buy? It's going to be your first iPad Pro 12.9-inch. Yes, right now you could save like $100 by getting the old model, but certainly for $100 or so, maybe even $200 if we see enough of a discount eventually on the old model. Still, you're getting the new CPU, you're getting the better screen, you're getting the better camera and all that sort of thing in the new model. So starting from scratch, yes, get the new model. If you're just doing that productivity work, I think that the CPU in the old generation is going to keep you happy for a while. It should be strong enough to run iOS 11. So there you have it. For productivity and general consumption, no, not so much. Now for art, this is where things get all kind of different, okay? And for photo editing too, because that P3 wide gamut display with the True Tone color correction on it is just as good as it gets. I mean, it just makes art people like me and photography people like me get really, really excited and happy and giggly and yay. So why is that? Our original iPad here has a blue-white color bias, like most laptops on the market today, too. It's not exactly color accurate. If you're creating content and you want the colors to be the way you think the colors, the way you're seeing them, then it's important to have a color-corrected display, one that's accurate, one that's pretty wide gamut, and that's where the new iPad Pro 12.9 shines. And let me just show you what I'm talking about. Okay, now this is a painting that I did in Procreate. We're in Procreate right now, and I think you can see the difference in the color bias going on here. One of these is a lot cooler. The greens look more blue-green instead of yellowy green. The sky has a little bit of too strong a blue cast almost. You know, gray blues are a little bit more natural. So this matters, because what happens when I'm looking at the gray-blue version here, when I put it on my PC, say I'm going to finish up with Photoshop and get real fancy pants or share it with the world or print it, whatever, suddenly it looks more yellowy green than I expected. And it's going to be very hard when you're creating artwork to try to imagine a warmer version of what you're working on. It just can make you kind of crazy. So the improvement is significant here. If you're doing concept art, this is something akin to concept art, landscape art, that kind of thing. Now, if you're doing something like cartoons, comics, it matters a bit less because your color palette is kind of independent. And let's look at a picture of that kind instead. Now here, surprisingly, you would think the cartoon would be where you would see the difference even less, but it's more noticeable. That's because the painting had many, many different colors in it. It's a more complex thing. You have to have maybe a keener eye to catch what I'm talking about. But here, I created this actually on the original iPad, and I wanted that kind of nice blue screen, blue sky rather, and that kind of cool look, because here we have two fictional bird creatures that I just randomly drew from my imagination, and I wanted to be in some place like Alaska. But in reality, what it looks like is this kind of yellowy blue, greeny blue. And that's a little bit of a shock. So when you look at that on a color calibrated PC or Mac, that's actually what you're going to see there. If you go print it up on your printer, this is what you'll see. So this is where it can be crazy making. You wanted to make this. What you ended up with that is an output. So that's why it matters. And I know this is starting to turn into a Bob Ross moment here in art instruction and all that sort of thing, but I think you get the idea. Now, photography, no matter what, it is always better to have the color accurate display because there's no division between here's a fictional world that I created in comics where my color palette is independent from reality. And photography is always based on reality, so it's always going to matter. Now with our little friend, the 10.5-inch iPad Pro versus the 9.7-inch, this doesn't really matter because the original 9.7-inch iPad Pro had a True Tone display and that wide gamut P3 display already. So there's a difference there. You're not really going to get as much of an improvement. Yeah, it's going to be a brighter display and even a little bit better and slightly, ever so slightly tweaked where, man, you got to have the eyes to see the difference. So this particular thing only applies to those you're considering the two 12.9-inch iPads. Now, I'm not sure how much this really matters to people, but you get a big camera upgrade too with the latest generation iPads. If you actually do use your camera a lot, I make no value judgment. Some people make fun of people who use their tablet cameras. Hey, whatever you want to do, it works for you, that's cool. It does make sense because some people use tablets for vertical market applications like insurance, or you're taking pictures that you actually want to use as inspirations for paintings and that sort of thing. You're going to get a better camera, obviously, on the newer one. But, you know, the old one wasn't terrible, but it's a noticeably improved camera, and that 4K video recording quality is pretty darn nice on the newer iPad Pro models. All right, how about the smaller iPad, the iPad 10.5 versus the 9.7? I'm sorry, we don't have a 9.7-inch iPad Pro in-house. We don't get to keep all these review units. They go back to the manufacturers and so on. So, oh, and by the way, this is called the stump. Every time we use this in a tablet video, you guys and gals ask. So this is simply called the stump. It sells for around $20. In fact, it says stump on the bottom and stump store. There are clones of it as well. It's the stump. Back to this. The big reason to upgrade here would be gaining almost an inch of screen real estate while having a product that gets barely any bigger. So that's the big selling point there, and that's kind of nice. If you felt your 9.7-inch was too cramped, it probably happens a lot to people who got a 12.9-inch iPad Pro, said that thing is too big to carry around, and went for the smaller one and always felt like it was a little too small. This might be the Goldilocks principle in action. This one feels kind of just right, you know? Maybe if they went up to 11, it would be even nicer. But beyond that, the other reason is, of course, the CPU is faster, but the same thing applies as with the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. The existing CPU in the iPad Pro 9.7-inch is already so fast that I don't think that's going to matter other than future-proofing, which is more important for people who are making the first-time purchase, honestly. The other neat thing, besides, of course, this gets iPhone 7 little cameras in it too, is finally, just like the bigger iPad, you can use USB-C to charge this. Why is that important? Because iPads charge very slowly. So with the 12.9-inch, I've been using USB-C chargers with it, and just using the USB connector to do that. Well, now you can do that with the little guy too. So you get quicker charging there. And the other really nice thing is you finally get 4 gigs of RAM in this, just like the 12.9-inch models. So you're going to get a RAM upgrade. And those of you who are using the iPad Pro 9.7 for art and for photography, especially when you're starting to do layers, I know a lot of people complained that they couldn't use as many layers, or the iPad would start to slow down because you had half the RAM of the big model. So that's no longer a problem. Good times. A reason you might want to upgrade. If you're, again, all of this is making it pretty clear that if you're photography and art-centric, there's a better case for upgrading than if you're just using this for fun and productivity kind of stuff. Lastly, there's that 120 hertz refresh screen, which, you know, you can watch our full review and see a whole lot of that in action. You can tell the difference when you look at it, when you squiggle your icons around. Probably our camera can't keep up with how static they actually look and painted on when they're moving back and forth without the blur. But there is a difference in the pen input, which once again gets back to probably the photography and art people. For note-taking, the old one, it's already one of the best on the market, you know, in terms of pen latency, how quickly the lines show on screen. But we're going to show you a slow motion video next of the original iPad 12.9 and the second generation one doing the same test with the jaggy lines and then with the circles. And when it's slowed down, you'll see that there is a significant difference there. And yeah, I can feel it when I'm doing artwork, particularly if I'm doing fast strokes. You can. It feels more natural, more pencil-like. A pencil always makes a mark exactly at the moment that you put it there. There's never any delay. Anything that gets closer to that reality is better. So there you have it, old and new iPad Pro models compared so you can figure out if you should upgrade. Of course, the new one's going to be better, right? That's just what happens. But is it better enough in important ways to you? And can you afford it? Only you know if you can afford it. These are not cheap products by any means. They're very expensive. But in the end, I would say primarily if you're buying one of these to do artwork, whether it's photo editing or drawing, painting, that sort of thing, then there's a strong case for it if you can afford it. If you're just using them for productivity, not so much. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos, and thumbs up if you like this vid.